Hi everyone. The purpose of this video is just for you to reflect on the research question that you have created in your Nearpod. One thing that I always stress whenever I do any sort of research writing and I'm teaching it, whether it's in my CIS University writing class in 10th grade or whatever class that it is, I always stress that your research question is ever evolving. It's not going to stay the exact same from beginning to end a lot of the time. Sometimes you retweak the wording. Sometimes you sit there and realize, hey, this isn't a good fit. I can't find information. Or maybe later on down the line, you're like, oh, I found something even cooler and something more interesting than what I am focusing on. So just kind of know that. But one thing we hope that you will kind of notice is that it is very similar to what we did with the TKM essay. We want you to have a question be your driving force. That is what you are looking to gather information on and how you are going to focus your paper. Your thesis statement is going to be the answer to your question. And that's what we will be looking for. That's why it is essential to come up with a research question, because then it makes sure that your ideas and the research that you are creating, they connect, they go together, they make sense. So what we are going to have you do is sit there and get onto the correct hour Google document and revise your research question. One thing that I would stress is check your either email, Schoology messages, because your teachers will be looking at your Nearpod and kind of giving you some feedback on that. So you have two options for your purpose in your writing. You might do a problem solution or you might do an argumentative. I'll start off with the problem solution because a lot of times that's the easier research question to come up with because of the fact that it's kind of already there. A lot of times with this particular style of writing, I see a two-part question. And with those two parts, one is dealing with the problem, one is dealing with the solution. So you just have to ask yourself, okay, look at my narrow topic, the process to become an immigrant. What is the problem? So there could be many different things that I could come up with, but what I came up with is what is impeding the process, which is the problem, of immigrants to become US citizens? What's slowing everything down? What is making so many hoops to jump through in order to become a US citizen? And then my second part to the question is dealing with the solution. How can we further help make this a better process? So keep in mind, it is perfectly fine to do two questions. If you start getting into three or four, then it's just too much. You need to narrow down a little bit further. Now, the harder one is the argumentative. So I'm going to be using some resources that I use in my CIS class because they do have to write an argumentative research paper, significantly longer than the one we're asking you to do, and a little bit different. But what we want you to do is use some of the tools, some of the ideas, because it is kind of helpful. Because sometimes this is the hardest research question to come up with. And we don't want to deter you from doing an argumentative. So when you are writing an argumentative paper, you are stating your opinion. You should not be using I, me, or my in any way, shape, or form. We know it is your opinion. But what you want to do is kind of think about what is that major focus. And so I will have both of these sources available to you on Schoology, and your teachers will as well. Sometimes just looking at it will help. If you want to make a copy and fill it out on this, by all means, you can feel free to. So essentially what you're going to do is start with what you already have, that main topic. And then you're going to add the viewpoint, which is a social aspect. Yes, I understand that there are a bunch of these other things tied into it, but your major focus is that social concept. And then you're going to combine main topic plus that viewpoint. You're going to focus your viewpoint. Think about the time period. Remember, depending on your topic, it might be time sensitive. And so you might only want to do a couple years. Well, some might do 5. If you're going beyond 10 years, then you should really question what you are looking at. Geography, the place. So for the most part, a lot of you might think of just like the United States. But if you want to talk about the Midwest, if you want to talk about certain areas in the world, you could do the whole entire world as well if you so choose. And then demographics, that's just talking about like the groups of people who are impacted and what that entails in that group. Is there a specific age? Is there an ethnicity attached, or a species, or nationality, or education, whatever it may be? Is there something specific about that group of individuals that are being impacted by this topic that you chose? And then last but not least, you're going to combine that all together. So I used an example, and this is how I came up with the research question that I'll go back to on the Google document that you will be editing. So my main topic, the process to become an immigrant, and then I'm focusing on the social aspects. So when you start combining that, that makes it a little bit easier, the social impact of the process to become an immigrant. And that is helping kind of narrow down my question. Now, on my time period, I'm only going to focus on the last 5 years. That way I can have a little bit of Obama's administration if I wanted to, and kind of make a comparison, if that is helpful, on what the immigration process was during his time. But I don't need all of his information. My real focus is trying to just focus on these last 4 years because there is some differences. And so that makes it a little bit easier. I don't need to go all the way back to many other presidents and what their kind of viewpoints are. We want to focus just on the present day. My geographic place is the United States. And then my demographics is obviously focusing on immigrants. So then as I take some of these ideas and concepts, I put it together to form that question. What is the social impact of the process to become an immigrant? Notice how that's kind of here. You can start off with what or how or why as your question starter. A lot of times those are the easiest ones to go with. In the United States. And so I want to add the United States part. I don't need the time period necessarily in my question, but I will use that in my advanced searches as I go through. And that will help me kind of make sure I'm weeding out sources that might not be as relevant. So if I see something from 1985, I'm not going to use that. I'm going to look at things that were from 2015 and on. And that just helps narrow down the search so I don't have 1,000 sources to kind of go through. So my hope is that kind of helps with narrowing that down. As I said before, try and look at any messages from your teacher. If your teacher has not messaged, you can still look at what you put down as your research question. But if you're like, hey, after watching this video, I kind of want to change, I want to morph. I also understand if you're like, hey, I don't even want to do this topic anymore. I want to change topics. Feel free to do that. But I hope this helped you kind of understand how to come up with that research question, and that we will reference this and talk about this as we continue on when we start next week with finding sources. I hope that helped. Good luck narrowing down and coming up with a research question.